Hello and welcome to Access Asia here on France 24. Coming up, the Myanmar resistance spreads into neighboring Thailand. We'll find out how exiled Burmese citizens are organizing to support protests in their homeland. China is to overhaul Hong Kong's political system. A new resolution will effectively replace democratic representation with Communist Party loyalists. And one of the world's biggest sports competitions without international fans. Tokyo limiting access to the Olympics over coronavirus fears. Well, for weeks now, hundreds of thousands of people in Myanmar have marched against the military junta. Their demand for democracy has put them in the army's crosshairs. Dozens have been killed, thousands more detained. But there has been help. A network of exiled Burmese citizens living in Thailand is organizing and financing the resistance. Didier Gruel reports.
Beyond this barbed wire, Myanmar is only a few meters away. We're in Mai Sot, a small town on the Thai side of the border. The 60,000 Burmese refugees here know that their country is in lockdown, imposed by the military junta since the first February coup. The Burmese here flash the three-finger salute, which has become a symbol of Asian pro-democracy protests. All along the border and in Mai Sot's market, the Burmese migrants are angry and united like never before.
All the Burmese people here support the movement. Everyone contributes from their pockets, and we send the money to Myanmar to help them.
They provide not only financial help, but also logistic and digital support. From a discreet location, an association of former Burmese political prisoners is running low-profile operations, hidden from the junta's spies. Created 20 years ago, this organization identifies human rights violations on the other side of the border.
Thanks to new technology, we can show many things. This wasn't possible in 1988. It's a great opportunity for us, and we can get closer to victory this time.
1988, the year which changed the course of Burmese history and announced Aung San Suu Kyi to the world. This exiled activist was amongst the students who fought the army for months. An ultra-violent crackdown led to the death of 3,000 people and a 14-year prison sentence for him. Today, he's back in action, helping current protesters.
We, the former political prisoners, are collecting signatures from all the Burmese immigrants. We'll send them to international human rights organizations. The only sentence that the generals deserve is the rope, and I want to be the one to hang them.
The impact of the current pro-democracy movement and the army crackdown has been felt not only in Yangon and other big Burmese cities, but also across the country. In this small school, most of the pupils are Burmese.
I admire Aung San Suu Kyi. She is a strong, hard-working, brave woman, and she takes care of her people. In the future, I would like to become like her.
A stark message for the generals. The roots of resistance are strong.
Well, at the end of its annual meeting, China's National People's Congress called for the overhaul of Hong Kong's election rules. Critics say the resolution reduces democratic representation. It's among the latest steps that Beijing has taken to tighten its grip on the semi-autonomous territory.
The local leader of Hong Kong is known as the Chief Executive. The Chief Executive is chosen by the Election Committee, which has 1,200 members. Under the new electoral reforms, this committee would be expanded with 300 more spots, likely to be filled with Beijing allies. Furthermore, candidates running for chief executive will now face tougher restrictions. They must now receive at least some support from all of the so-called functional constituencies, various business groups and special interests represented on the committee. Such a move could make it more difficult for pro-democracy candidates to get their names on the ballot.
We will always insist that Hong Kong be ruled by patriots.
The election committee will also have more power over Hong Kong's local city government, known as the Legislative Council, with the ability to directly appoint some of its members. The electoral reform would also expand its size from 70 seats to 90, giving Beijing an opportunity to fill more seats with its supporters. Additionally, a new committee will be created to vet candidates running for the Legislative Council, allowing Beijing to block anyone deemed disloyal.
Those who are unpatriotic cannot be part of Hong Kong's power structure or governance. This does not mean that they cannot work and live normally in Hong Kong, just that they cannot participate in government.
The reforms are just the latest in a series of measures adopted by Beijing aimed at quashing opposition in Hong Kong. A national security law passed last year makes acts deemed secessionist or subversive punishable by up to life in prison.
Well, the pandemic already forced the Tokyo Olympics to be rescheduled from last year to this July. But if it goes on as planned, there could be no overseas fans. Wasim Cornet explains.
An almost empty stadium. That is what this summer's Olympic Games could look like. The construction of the national arena in Tokyo cost Japan more than 1 billion euros. There's room for as many as 68,000 spectators, but it looks like anyone who does attend the Summer Games will be Japanese. The International Olympic Committee has already hinted at what could prove to be a controversial decision.
There will be probably a decision towards the end of March, at least regarding international spectators.
The Olympics without any international sports fans would be a lot less festive than past editions, but the pressure from the Japanese public to postpone or even cancel the games has been very strong.
The number of positive cases isn't low enough, and Japan is not conducting enough PCR tests. I don't think tourists should come to Japan. And I think it is just too reckless to hold the Olympics in this situation.
According to a poll published earlier this month, 75% of Japanese people do not want any foreign tourists to attend the Games. They were, of course, supposed to be held last year, and this drastic decision could be the only way to salvage the Tokyo Olympics. The 15,000 athletes who will take part in the Games will undergo frequent and strict testing before and during the competition. Parts of Japan have been under a second state of emergency since January, yet the country has been relatively spared by COVID-19, with some 8,400 deaths since the beginning of the pandemic. But the vaccination campaign has been slow to start, with the first shots only administered in mid-February.
Well, a group of Nepalese Sherpas made history recently, becoming the first climbers ever to summit the mountain of K2 in winter. The world's second highest peak is known as one of the most dangerous climbs on the planet. Janamil Jamin takes a look at the historic feat.
In the icy vastness of the Himalayas, here at the border of China and Pakistan, sits the second highest peak in the world, K2. Until 2 months ago, this was the last mountain over 8,000 meters high to be conquered during the winter. But in January, these Nepalese mountaineers achieved the impossible, reaching its summit at an altitude of 8,611 meters, one of them doing so without even the use of any oxygen. For two of the Sherpas who joined in on the formidable expedition, merely reflecting on the ascent still sends shivers up their spines.
The most difficult thing was the weather. Nobody before us had climbed K2 in winter. The weather up there at this time of year can change at any moment in just a few seconds. The temperature near the summit falls below minus 60 degrees. It's very difficult to climb in these conditions.
To immortalize their exploits, these extreme climbers filmed throughout their chilling ascent.
MINGMA, I think this is one of the hardest climb we have ever made. It was so difficult to find a way through the crevasse.
Out of breath, they had to cross some particularly technical passages, like this 400-meter-long wall of rock and ice at an altitude of more than 7,000 meters. Even the rare moments of rest presented an ordeal. As soon as they stopped climbing, they were paralyzed by the cold. Trying to sleep inside their tents, they would be greeted by blistering winds as temperatures plummeted to minus 36 degrees.
So when we wake up like this.
After several weeks of climbing, the Nepalese mountaineers wait for each other a mere few meters from the summit. They're going to reach it together, hand in hand, singing the Nepalese national anthem. In the Himalayas, Sherpas are the ones who open the route for foreign climbers. At last, this victory inscribes their own names into the legends of history.
We Sherpas are known to be excellent climbers, but we had never done an exploration in our name. Now we've climbed K2, and no one can take that away from us.
Known as the Wild Mountain, K2 is also one of the most dangerous in the world. More than 90 people have already died on its treacherous slopes since 1954.
And we finish in India. Millions of people are bathing in the river Ganges as part of the Hindu festival Kumbh Mela. It is said to be the largest peaceful religious pilgrimage in the world. All participants at this year's event were required to present a negative coronavirus test result, but there was little evidence of social distancing. Now, the waters of the Ganges are believed to be sacred, ridding people of sin and sparing them from any future evil. Well, that's it for this edition. Thank you for watching. Please stay tuned to France 24.
From North to South Africa, from Bamako to Nairobi, from Accra to Mogadishu. Bringing you all the political, economic, cultural and social news from Africa for a better insight into an ever-changing continent.
Across Africa, presented by Georgia Calvin-Smith on France 24 and France24.com.